Funding for Elwood City Limits is provided by, me, I guess. Doesn't really cost much. And from viewers like you. Thank you.
My free time. That's what funds this.
Welcome, welcome. Hello there. This is Elwood City Limits. You're in the right place. This is the Episodic Arthur Podcast. Thank you very much for listening once again. My name's Will Young, and joining me on this romp through our favorite children's television show is Lucas Mancini.
Hello.
So, Lucas, we've got ourselves a little bit of business before we get into the episode today.
That's right.
We've got a couple of iTunes reviews to read off. Because I promised that if we were ever reviewed on iTunes, I would read them here in the podcast, and I forgot to do that a couple times. But now, not only am I going to do the two that we had by the beginning of this month, we also got a new one.
And hey, the offer still stands. The best way to get the word out about our podcast, well, there's the Facebook page and sharing it and telling your friends. That's great.
All that stuff at the beginning,
but
yeah.
One of the most important things is to hop onto iTunes, subscribe, and rate the podcast. If you don't want to write a review, you don't have to. You could just rate it. But that's the best way to help us get noticed by the iTunes algorithm, those mysterious Tron-like robots that decide whether we become popular or fade into obscurity.
Well, I'm happy to say that right off the bat, we have 5-star ratings on iTunes. Thank you, everybody who did that. So I'm going to start this off with our first 5-star review from iTunes user Cameo Man. Title: Podcast is not actually a joke. This is a legitimate podcast about Arthur. It's not something based off of Arthur memes. These are hour-long episodes filled with discussions about the show. It's also very entertaining, so it's definitely worth a listen.
Do you think it's Cameo with a K, like he's talking about the original Xbox 360 launch game?
I'm afraid not. It's with a C, so in the way it was intended to be used. Cameo Man, thank you very much. Our second review, that was on September the 1st, by the way. Our second review came in a day later on September 2nd. 5 stars, titled Having Fun Isn't Hard by Haruken. A hilarious and in-depth look into the early days of Arthur.
Hopefully we get to the later days sometime.
For sure. It's going to be a little while. I can't wait to see how old we'll be when that'll happen. And then our new one came in September 19th. And it's 5 stars from user HateBase. And it says, "Let's go, my dude." It starts off with great audio quality. Both hosts speak at a great volume and are both very well spoken. The audio clips that are spliced in are sometimes a little louder than expected. My apologies. I'm going to be working on that from here on in. Great content, interesting perspectives between both hosts. They both go very in-depth and bring up parts of the episodes that might often be overlooked. And then, we have a very special sign-off here. I love you, Lucas. Good job.
Oh my goodness. Not only was that so nice, but that guy really knows what he's talking about. He's got some audio knowledge. That's right. Hate base could be a lady.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you, everybody. And, of course, it doesn't have to be glowing to make it onto the podcast, but we do appreciate our iTunes reviews. All right, so let's get into it. This one, I kind of warned you the other day that this one could prove to be our longest yet, but we'll have to wait and see because I have a lot to say about particularly one half of this episode. So we've got Arthur goes to camp and Buster makes the grade. So noun, verbs. And noun, verbs episodes. And if you would like to follow along and fully get the Arthur experience, you can find these episodes in full on the internet by using Google.
As always, maybe hop on that incognito mode. You don't want CSIS or the NSA knowing that you might be doing something. It's a little bit, the copyright holders, they don't like it. You didn't hear it from us.
We do not support any way that you watch the show unless it is officially done through
legal means.
All right, so Arthur goes to camp. That is our first episode. We're starting it off with a great line from Arthur. So Arthur's in the old swimming hole at camp, assumedly, and he is being assailed at all sides by water. And he says, again, Ferris Buellering to the camera, and he says, "You know why parents send their kids to camp? For punishment." So
Now, do you agree with Arthur?
I couldn't help but notice on your notes. Like I didn't look at them. I only saw the first thing, but I noticed that you have experience with camping, Lucas.
That's right.
I think that's a little bit different between the two of us. So what are your experiences with camping?
So I love camping. I camped a lot with my dad as a kid. But I've also gone to summer camps very similar, like the ones that Arthur goes to in this episode, with the log cabins and the leaders and the groups and teams. And it's an interesting contrast because I love camping with my dad. I love the freedom of it. You can do whatever you want. When you're hungry, you eat. When you're cold, you make a fire. There's something very freeing about that sensation, that type of camping.
Simplicity, it sounds like.
The opposite is true with organized summer camps. I hated them as a kid because there were such strict rules. You have to be here at this certain time. You have to be doing this at this certain time. And also, I don't know, I like to think of myself as a people person, but being around everybody, it's hard living with people that you don't know very well. And I might have been a little bit more standoffish when I was a kid, so I had difficulties with that. But I never really liked this form of camping, the log cabins and the kids and the bunk beds, that whole thing. It's not really been my shtick. How about yourself, Will?
I hate camping.
Just in general, the whole concept.
I've only ever had one experience with it, and it was uniformly terrible. I had to do it as part of a program for junior high. It was my only time camping, and I didn't have any friends there. I was inexperienced in camping, and I didn't really get very much help. So I don't like it. Like being outdoors, sure, it's great, whatever.
You're so convincing.
Yeah, I'm too much of a homebody. I'm too much of an introvert. I like to stay inside, and thankfully I'm in a relationship with someone now who completely agrees. We are not huge fans of camping. The closest I've done to camping even recently is I stayed with my girlfriend's parents at their RV site. So what some people call glamping, glam camping. So, and it definitely was not roughing it in any sense.
You're like my aunt who says her idea of camping is staying at a 2-star hotel.
Word. No, exactly right. So I don't have any experiences of camping. I think my sister kind of did more of the organized camp thing. I did more like day camps that were based out of where I lived.
Yeah, I don't like those either. I don't like all the structure. I'm a free spirit, Will.
I guess so. Jeez. I'm learning a lot about you. So Arthur kind of takes us through, well, I guess what's meant to be the points against the camp. He starts off by saying, talking about the menu, and he holds up a hamburger and he says, looks like an ordinary hamburger, right? Wrong. It's a worm burger. And Monday, they serve macaroni and fleas. This seems a little bit slanderous.
It's very wet, hot American summer. This whole episode kind of is. It's sort of a wet, hot American summer type, the genre cliche, summer camp. Fleas, they're high in protein. I don't know if you've seen Snowpiercer, but insects are the future, man.
What was it in Snowpiercer? Was it
crickets?
Crickets. Yeah, exactly. But I find Arthur's commentary here a little spurious. I don't quite believe that they would serve him. I think he's I think he's projecting. That's what I'm saying. Then Arthur's tent with Brain, Binky, and Buster, the 3 Bs, are ravaged by the elements. Not just mosquitoes who form giant hands to assail the tent. Then
come on, guys, bug repellent.
It's
their fault,
right? Or like bug screens.
Exactly. There's plenty of precautions they could have taken that I'm sure they did it.
That tent's bigger than my apartment, and then, of course, by the elements themselves, by the thunder, lightning, and a tornado. Yeah, which again, have a hard time believing that this actually happened.
Well, we don't know what part of the world. We still don't know what part of the U.S. for sure Elwood City is.
Yeah, we never figured that out, did we? And then, of course, Lucas, the scariest thing of all at summer camp, the girls.
This is true. This is the one thing in his description: the worm burgers, the elements, all that I disagree with. But hey. It is the girls. At that age, it was the girls.
Mm-hmm. Especially the forced social interaction. So, of course, gotten into your camp experiences. So this is going to be the setting. Arthur goes to camp. Let's do it. So his parents are seeing him off. Give him a big stack of postcards that are pre-stamped and whatnot. Pretty easy.
They want him to write them every single day.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I guess if it's a summer camp, is Arthur going to be here for 3 months? Or is he here for like a few weeks? It seems weird because
I have a note about that
Oh, okay.
as we go along, and I feel like all will be answered. Then, of course, DW not missing an opportunity to get Arthur's goat or goat person. Runs out of the house saying, "You almost forgot your bionic bunny underwear," which gets quite a few giggles from the girls. Arthur chastises her, but also immediately swipes them away. So just like, she did get you.
I
You
would
did
have guessed
forget.
Arthur was a boxer's man, but nope, they're the.
I wasn't a boxer's man until I was biologically a man.
You know what? I agree with you. When I was a child, when I was Arthur's age, definitely not a boxer's man.
No, definitely not. You have to grow into
And
that.
I had some branded underwear as well, Scooby-Doo, and I liked them so much. The problem with branded underwear is the logo is always on the back, and this is so weird, but I liked seeing the picture, right? Because that's the whole point. You want to look at the picture, and no one sees you in your underwear except for yourself. So I would always wear them backwards because I wanted to look at the picture of Scooby-Doo.
I had Power Rangers undies.
Oh, that's dope.
I can't imagine wearing briefs anymore. That sounds like the most uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah, no.
I mean,
Maybe unless they're MeUndies.
I'm a wide set man, and my body can't take that anymore. So on the way there, Arthur's seated with Francine, of course, one of his best friends, and then Bicky calls him over, to note that once they get to camp, and even before then, it's boys against girls, which, to Arthur's credit, he immediately questions. He says, "Why?" To which Binky says, "That's a baby question."
Again, baby, the favorite slur of Arthur characters. The one thing they don't want to be the most.
And of course, Binky kind of holding up the systematic sexism of boys against girls for no real reason. He has no reason. He just says because.
Binky, it's always alluded to that Binky has this knowledge because he's done the third grade twice.
Yeah, he's a year older.
A lot of times, it's funny because Binky's often portrayed as kind of a dumb character, but a lot of times characters will look to him for guidance because he is literally older, so he's had all this life experience.
Well,
the other kids have.
And we see that later in the next episode for sure. So Binky wants to get at one of the girls with grade A industrial strength itching powder. Now, the two words that should be the most worrisome in that phrase are industrial strength.
Yeah, that leads me to believe this is like riot control itching powder. You know what I mean? Like militarized
Why
police
would you control
force.
a riot with itching powder?
I don't know. What else do you need industrial itching powder for except to dispel a crowd?
Oh, I'm lightheaded. That was great. Riot control.
The prisoners, they're getting loose. Spread the itching powder. Go, go, go.
Get the fake spiders. Scare them back in.
Whoopee cushion, stat.
So the industrial strength itching powder goes wrong, and I mean it wears off by the time the bus ride is over, so it must not be that bad. On the way there to their camp, which is Camp Meadow Croak, they pass by an enemy camp, which is called Camp Horsewater, or if you read the sign, Equi Aqua.
I didn't see that. That's so clever.
It's not. It doesn't make any sense.
Equestrian. Water, aqua.
Oh.
Equi-aqua, horse water.
Oh my God.
Are you having a moment?
Oh man.
Mankind means the same thing as dude love?
I've been wondering about that since I was a kid. Horse water oh my God. Oh man. Revelations here on the podcast.
We're all learning today.
This is why we're doing it though.
Exactly.
I wondered this Equi-aqua. What does that mean? That's just nonsense. Man, oh man. This is great. I'm so glad I brought that up. Anyway, Camp Horsewater, Equi-aqua, a.k.a. the camp of professional wrestlers.
That's right. 25-year-olds.
Yeah.
Lifting weights.
Dude, more jacked than I've ever been in my adult or teen life.
These are some Mr. Olympia-looking 8-year-olds, I'll tell you that much.
They saying the next bunch of pipsqueaks have arrived and then menacing them from afar. Goodness gracious.
They should hire USADA, the guys that caught Lance Armstrong, to monitor this camp. I'll tell you, especially if they want to regulate these upcoming competitions that are happening between the camps, there might be some doping going on.
Could be. You don't know what's in that horse water.
Exactly.
Don't even know what it's called in my case. So when they get off the bus at their camp, the instructor says, I will be your camp counselor for the week. So I'm to understand that this is a week away camp. So to answer your previous question, Arthur's mother gave him postcards to mail every day for a week, and she gave him like 50.
I was going to say, this brings up numerous issues. For one, the most pressing thing is, that means the timeline in this episode makes no sense, because there's going to be parts coming up where Arthur's parents are reading the letters from him, which is just downright improbable. Unless Arthur's paying for next-day Amazon shipping on these letters, it doesn't make any sense. It would take longer than a week for any of these to reach his parents. Plus, there's also like 50 letters.
Unless he did like in Camp Krusty, where he bribed a horse mail carrier with a bottle of bourbon to get it there post haste.
Yeah, there's three possibilities here. Either the horse bourbon, or Kevin Costner from the Postman. Postman Kevin Costner is personally delivering these, or his parents installed an Amazon Dash button in their home that they can press whenever they want to receive a Arthur letter by the end of the day.
I'm sorry, I love horse bourbon. Like, I know what you mean, but
horse bourbon, horse water.
Sounds like
it's a horse noun episode.
Yeah, horse nouns all over the place. But keep in mind, this is the 90s. Amazon wasn't really too much of a thing.
True.
I was gonna suggest drone, but we are far away from that. Anyway, you're right. Raises a lot of questions. So they park inside their roomy tents, as I said, bigger than my apartment. So we kind of get a preview of what Binky and the other guys have in mind for their pranks on the girls, which they are determined. Binky excitedly has more than industrial strength itching powder. He has stink bombs, wind up mice, and all that sort of Jack's Joke Shop style pranks.
I wrote here, Binky has numerous illegal artifacts. They obviously don't frisk the kids on their way through the camp.
Well, speaking of frisking the kids, you've got this kind of, I want to say, more innocent kind of monkey shines. They're not. They're obviously meant to annoy instead of, hurt or anything.
Or harm.
Sure. And then they look outside, and attached to the flagpole is their underwear. So we're talking about quote-unquote harmless pranks versus the girls who invaded their privacy. I don't want to turn this into a boys versus girls of our own, because unfortunately on this podcast, girls are outnumbered 2-0. But at the same time, I don't feel good about the fact that those girls kind of stepped over the habitual line steppers they've proven to be.
TEU, Tactical Espionage Underwear. These girls pulled some Sam Fisher business, because this all happens. We're in the boys' tent, this scene where Binky's showing off all of his tricks and pranks, a la The Matrix, just a wall of flowers that'll spray water in your face. And then the girls, unforeseen, sneak in, steal all their undergarments, and put them up on the flagpole. Very impressive. Not only that they could climb the flagpole, but they did this all undetected.
Yes, indeed. Impressive for sure, but also a little bit much. And so this Arthur's goat gotten for a second time in this episode as he marches out and yells in Francine's face, "I hope you know this means war," in his best Daffy Duck embodiment.
That's right. The girls, I guess, in the end, after Binky was planning all this stuff, the girls shot the first shot.
And then it leads to one of the biggest laughs I had in this episode. And so, like you said, his parents receiving these postcards pretty quickly. It goes to Arthur in the tent on the first night, and the postcard back home is, Day 1, Dear Mom and Dad, it's war. And that's it. Can you imagine receiving that from your kid at summer camp? It was just day one, dear mom and dad, it's war. And then you're just like, what happened? Are we in a Red Dawn situation? What's happening at my camp?
So the narrative device for this episode, unlike the other episodes where some have been like self-narrated, like noir kind of things, this episode's kind of like a 1940s war film where it's Arthur's messages to his parents are like, oh, our boys in blue on the coast. Like,
yeah, he has one in just a little bit here, like there's a montage of the boys getting schooled at every competition and prank war so far, and then it goes to Arthur and Brain in a tent, to which he says, I can't tell you where I'm writing from. It's a secret. Just get me out of here. And I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
So he's expecting that their message could be seized by the enemy mid-transit. So he can't reveal his coordinates.
And when we see Arthur's family reading these letters, his mom, his dad, and DW, they're weirdly amused by the whole thing. Like
we all did this at camp.
Well, but they're smiling and they like think it's a weird vibe to me because like Arthur's literally only the experience of camp should be being one with nature, having fun in the woods, having fun with your friends. He literally only writes them about this competitive war with the other sex. It's kind of strange that his parents are so into it.
And speaking of war, like the nature of this competition is kind of is a little odd to me. So
it's very cerebral.
So in that tent scene with Arthur and Brain, they leave a skunk outside of their tent and they reenact the end of Inside, if you've played that game, and they run away in the tent. So I'm kind of wondering, like, is Arthur having fun at this? Like, is this fun or not? And the other thing is that, like, there's a scene where the boys are chasing after Francine, and like then they get like they fall in the trap, and you know they get dunked on by the girls. And I'm just wondering, like, what's the nature of the competition here? Like, were they trying to catch her? Like, I'm always kind of afraid that in this situation there's like an undercurrent of like implied physical violence if like the boys catch the girls.
Well, a tiger trap is super dangerous. When you fall that far without knowing you're going to fall, there's a very high chance that you're going to break something.
Sure.
I mean, that's what a tiger trap is meant for. It's meant to trap a tiger, right? So it could cause damage.
Hence the name Tiger Trap.
Exactly. It's interesting because Arthur sets up this episode saying he doesn't like camp.
Sure.
And I think Arthur's sort of, his hand's been forced here. He's a conscientious
objector.
That's right. Initially,
Easy
he tells
for us to
Binky
say.
he doesn't see, like, he's friends with the girls. Francine, as we've established, is his second best friend. So I don't think he sees the same hard lines that Binky does. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. But the girls forced his hand. They put that underwear up there. So I think Arthur's acting like he thinks he should. It's another episode where Arthur's sort of fitting in, you know what I mean? Everybody else is all gung-ho to fight the girls. They forced Arthur's hand. I think he's just going to do this. But I think deep down, he doesn't really want this competition.
You know,
he wants to work together.
You're really making me think about this. This is like, perhaps deep down, this was the Arthur writers' this was their platoon. This was their Spec Ops the Line of anti-war statements. Arthur's just following orders. He's doing what's expected of him. And they're only escalating.
It's the Arthur version of the Butter Battle book.
The what?
It's the
what? I'm
Dr.
sorry?
Seuss story that's actually all about communism.
The Butter Battle book.
Look it up. It's Dr. Seuss's darkest tale by far. Basically, I'll give this quick synopsis, quick aside. The Who's build a wall, and there's a wall between the Who's that like to put butter on their bread a certain way, and the Who's on the other side want to put butter on their bread another way. The book is so dark because basically it's another story of escalation. They talk about the boys in the back have cooked up something to get it over the other side of the wall. That book ends with Who's balancing on the wall, dropping these beans that are going to like explode if they hit the ground. And it ends like it cuts before a concrete ending where they're both balancing, both about to drop their beans, and then hard cut. We don't know how the Butter Battle book ends. Is it just mutually assured destruction between the Who's? Luckily, spoilers, the war between the boys and the girls in this Arthur episode doesn't get this far.
And certainly not.
But hey, war is hell, Will.
It's true. War is heck. War is hell. War is duty. All of that stuff. Anyway, back to lighter topics like kids reading scary comics together. I think that's pretty cute. So
1,036 of them to be exact.
That's how many Brain brought with him?
He brought his whole collection.
His collection.
1,036 comics.
Amazing. I don't know. I just think kids reading comics together is pretty cute. So this part kind of, keep it a little bit recent. They start to hear these weird noises in the woods, and it's a little bit of Arthur meets Blair Witch before the Blair Witch Project even happened. So Arthur gets to have a little bit of his own experience of that because they hear a bunch of noises in the woods and they're beginning to get scared off, and of course the scary comics aren't helping. They go outside and they're, of course, they immediately think it's the girls, but then they spot animal tracks. They check the comic book, and it's the same tracks that the monster in the comic book is making. But my question is, the tracks that they see in their reality are bear tracks. The monster in the comic is a slime monster, the mutant creature of the slime. How does slime make bear tracks exactly?
I wrote this down too. It's really confused. I guess I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. If the slime monster can fill any form he wants, similar to gelatin, maybe he could make his feet the shape of bear tracks if he wanted to. It really doesn't make that much sense, though. And it also doesn't make that much sense that they're scared of a bear. It's this whole thing again, the animal hierarchy. Hashtag animal hierarchy. I know, I'm sorry. I keep bringing it up now. I didn't think
about that.
But they're all scared of a bear. Arthur, you've met bears.
Brain's a bear.
Brain, you are a bear. What is going on here?
Actually,
you are sleeping. You want to see where the bear is. You're sleeping next to one. He's the one that gave you the 1,036 comics.
Weirdly enough, Brain the bear later on pretends to be a bear. Oh man, this is messing with me. This is messing
levels
with me
upon
big time.
levels.
Oh man,
a bear within a bear.
Oh my god,
we have to go deeper.
We do.
All right.
So I can't bear it any longer. So they meet up with the girls who confirm that it is not them who are making the noises, and then they come across the main three goons of Camp Horsewater who are making the tracks and spooking them to try and intimidate them, I guess. So Arthur comes up with an idea to get back at them on the eve of the scavenger hunt, which they have set up earlier as the winning camp will get the scavenger hunt trophy, which has never happened because Camp Horsewater's won it 3 years in a row.
Not just an idea, a stupendous, surefire plan.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It's Arthur realizes this can't fail, and so he decides the only way that they can do it is if they call a truce, which made me realize no wonder that they've never won the trophy, because they've always instigated this BS war between the boys and the girls. And perhaps it was a Camp Horsewater sleeper agent that sowed the seeds of war between the boys and the girls to assure their destruction and Camp Horsewater's domination of the trophy.
It was a proxy war, an Equi-Aqua funded coup. Man, there's some political intrigue going on in this episode. I was joking earlier when I said tactical espionage underpants, but that really should be what this episode should be called.
Oh, there's going to be so many options to name this episode. They decide to put their differences together and work together if they want to overcome Horsewater, the real enemy. Fight the real enemy, as Sinead would say. So they decide to go for the scavenger hunt, and they're immediately kind of overtaken by these he-men and she-women of Camp Horsewater, who
it's
are
not just the kids, though. At the start of the scavenger hunt, you can see the Horsewater leader. He looks like the bunny version of Ivan Drago.
He's a living muscle, that man. that dog, whatever he is. I got to say, some sweet goon laughs from the Horsewater crew. There's a great one from the lead bunny of just whenever they miss out on the balloons. It's just like, I've got it, sucker. Like a real sort of Hamburglar type laugh. It's great. Like just really gooning it up.
Downright maniacal.
So they're on the losing end. Essentially, the enemy's got the payload to 99%, and they're just trying to keep it in overtime until they can push back.
I love this whole scene. Like, it's really well paced. like there's an urgency to everything, and it's cut really quickly, like joke after joke after joke. And the Horsewater Kids are so cartoonishly evil. It's awesome.
For sure. In fact, as they begin to put the plan to action, they have their own chant.
They got bars.
And the chant goes as such: "We're number one. We're number one. Yeah, yeah."
Yeah, yeah. Like it's straight. I'm trying to think what rapper that reminds me of. It's straight out of a rap ad lib. Just yeah, yeah. The early 2000s, like they're rolling with 50.
I'll have to take your word for it. So, of course, their plan is to make the Horsewater Kids think that there is a bear about. They've dressed Brain up in the previously established mink fur coat that Muffy arrived to the camp with because, of course, the joke is, haha, she's rich. So he's covered with it and, still with his pants and his shoes on, pretending to be a bear. And then their plan is for the Horsewater Kids to go up into the tree, and then they will say, "Scare him away, throw something at him," and they will throw every single valuable on them, only for Brain to catch and for him to cross the finish line with. This plan's stupid. I hate this plan.
It's sort of a Rube Goldberg
plan. It's not, because Rube Goldberg has an outline. This revolves around so much.
There's a lot of points of failure.
There's a lot of points of failure, and really the fact that it went off the way it did is a modern miracle. Because you have to assume that they would all go up the tree. You would assume that they would all, it's Arthur yelling, "Throw something at him," and they wouldn't just be like, "No, I'll just wait till it goes away," or something. Or like call for help or whatever. And then like playing into their hand in a degree that you would only get in a children's cartoon, the lead bully from Horsewater says, "Hey, that bear's an awfully good catch. Something fishy's going on here," and then keeps throwing stuff at him. And then they just manage to teleport Brain to the waypoint and then get him past the finish line. It's dumb. I think it's
counterpoint.
So dumb.
The plan was stupendous and surefire. Arthur said it himself, and it turned out it worked.
I'll give you surefire. I'm not giving you stupendous. Let's meet in the middle here.
I'll meet you halfway.
It was at least one of those things.
It's funny because you remember now that these kids, though they might look like 30-year-old bodybuilders, are 8-year-olds because they're fooled by this headless mink coat.
Or like 10 at the most.
Still, I think when I was 10, I could tell the difference between a bear attacking me and a headless mink coat. It's the farthest thing from a bear I could think of. It's just vaguely furry. It looks more like It from the Addams Family.
Looks like more of a bear costume you get out of an exploitation movie.
I guess if they cut the head off, there's no head. Anyway.
It's just I don't know.
An undead bear. Now that's scary. Zombie headless bear.
Well, if they sold it like that.
I think I saw that on the Sci-Fi Network.
But they didn't. So they get across the line. Arthur gets a last-minute Hail Mary because the last thing is a postcard, and he's got one in his pocket. They win the trophy.
Yeah, he's got about 49 extra ones.
Didn't have to go far. So everybody says 3 cheers for Arthur. And a line I actually liked was Arthur saying, 3 cheers for us, we're a team. And so it's just a nice little... Good one, Arthur. You could have taken that. You could have taken the glory for yourself, but you didn't. So you know what? Good on you. And so the episode ends with them celebrating, and then the final postcard to his family that Arthur says, "Camp is great. I can't wait to come back next year." And this is actually the first mention where we get Arthur's sister's name, because he says, "Dear Mom, Dad, DW, and Kate." I remember when I saw this when I was a kid, and I was like, "Who's Kate?" And I immediately assumed it must be his aunt because I have an aunt who's named Kate.
Infallible logic.
Sure. But of course that's his baby.
Much like Arthur's plan.
His somewhat yet to be named baby sister Kate. And that's that episode. So Arthur goes to camp, and we go from that into now a word from us kids. So this one is all about stuff that they would bring to camp, keeping it pretty simple, just a nice little drawing experiment where they all have a piece of paper with like a briefcase handle on it and, what they would bring to camp. So not too much to say about this one. We'll say that the host that they have, the little girl named Sasha, is very good. She's very animated. They really picked a good kid to represent the class. But a couple of things I liked from what they put in there was one of the kids says she would bring a picture of my family in case I forget what they look like.
Maybe she was taking a camping trip to the past, Back to the Future style. And so she needed the picture to see if her parents would fade away if she changed anything.
Well, we may as well be talking about science fiction because we get no less than 3 portable TVs that kids are taking, to which I was like, when I was their age, I was like, portable TVs exist? And they could just take them? They have one to take with them?
I was picturing like the PlayStation 1 that had the screen included.
Buddy, you're talking beyond the price range of a 6-year-old here.
What's funny is like, the editors of Now a Word From Us Kids, they walk such a fine line of getting a little bit of humor out of the segment without making fun of the kids. They always laugh with them, not at them.
Yeah.
Like, I think what they were trying to do here, because they cut back to back to back of all the kids saying they want a portable TV.
Yes.
And I think the message is, oh, isn't it funny? These kids are camping, but they still want to watch like their TV shows. But it's not really making fun of the kids. It's laughing with them. It's like, oh, look at this silly thing. And I think it's really well done.
Kids in the 90s love TV. So
one kid wants to bring a boombox, and I want to hang out with that kid. He's sort of the Radio Raheem of this 3rd grade class.
By the way, speaking of that, I want to share with you the great joke that I had because one of the movies we watched for my film minor in university was Do the Right Thing. And so my friend and I were at the screening, and spoilers ahead for Do the Right Thing. It's a great movie.
Spoiler.
Is when Radio Raheem gets his boombox destroyed in the pizza joint. I turned to my friend and I said, "No, now he's just regular Raheem."
That is all right. I'm gonna have to steal that.
I'm very proud of that joke. Please cite me if you use that joke.
# regular Raheem.
Regular Raheem. And then at the end, they do some Dear Arthur letters about kind of what they learned from their exercise or whatever. You know, cute enough. It's pretty by the numbers. And now a word from us kids.
And now back to Arthur.
So we go to the second episode, and I'm sure you must have loved this one. Buster makes the grade, and not just this episode, but this opening, which is Buster Monkey Shines at their finest. We are at peak Buster here.
So Buster's whole character is he's essentially, especially in these scenarios, he's the class clown, right? He doesn't want to focus on his academics. He's just trying to have a good time.
For sure.
And one of the ways he does this is he makes all these funny faces in class. Every time Buster makes a face, there's Foley work.
Yeah,
So,
there's
like,
a sound effect.
Buster's like the contortions his face makes just because it goes spring, like it's
like yeah, all this, all
he's
that weird stuff.
Very talented too.
Yeah, I have no idea how he's doing that. So the many ways that Buster before a test, Arthur kind of punted it up a little bit in his Ferris Bueller way. Just Buster staying on top of his homework. He's sleeping on top of a bunch of books. He likes to bounce ideas off his friends. He's throwing paper balls at kids in the class. And Buster likes to get the most out of what he's reading. And so this one I loved as a kid and I love now. Buster's got a hollowed out book in the library filled with Cheetos. Genius.
Especially because he picked Cheetos. Because bacteria doesn't recognize them as food, they'll never go bad. Maybe a tad stale, but he could leave that book hidden. He's probably got books hidden all over the city with various non-perishables.
He's got Cheetos and different area codes.
If the apocalypse...
I thought that was funny.
I think it was funny, too.
You didn't laugh.
You gotta leave that in.
It'll crash and burn on its own.
I laughed on the inside. But
fair enough.
I want to point out, if the apocalypse reaches Elwood City, Buster's the guy to go to. He's prepared. He's got to be on your team as long... The brain... He'll be the brains of the operation. Buster, he's got Twinkies stashed all over the place. He's picking foods that won't go bad, and it's hidden in all these convenient areas.
Buster Baxter, private eye. He knows a thing about operating on the other side of the law.
Exactly.
You can't be a good detective without knowing a little bit about the other side. Of course, this revolves around the fact that Buster is a bit of a goof-off, which means that he doesn't exactly get down to the hard studying. So we start the episode with the kids getting a test back. And I liked how, Mr. Ratburn's kind of got a comment for every one of them that he gives back. Just like, Miss Frensky, superb. Miss Crosswire, not bad. Mr. Reed, review those multiplication tables. And then gets to Buster, and it's just, Buster. And it's just like, you know what this means. It's great. No, I thought that was a very subtle.
No, Mr. Ratburn can be savage sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
In previous episodes, he's talked about things are illegible.
No, that's this episode.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
later
yeah.
on this episode, which is something I noted as well. No, he can be very candid when he wants to be, but I think as in Arthur's spelling trouble, I think it's because he expects great things out of these kids, and he's not the kind of man you want to disappoint.
He's no nonsense.
No, for sure. Well, at this point, he'll definitely get more nonsense as we go on. And I long for those days. So at the end of class, he calls Buster into Principal Haney's office, where his mother and grandmother are present. And I looked at this and just like, what is he going to be executed? Like, to bring his next of kin in, and it's just to tell him that he's failing. Like, why? His mom, I understand. His grandma?
Hey, they act like he's being executed though. One of them breaks out crying, sobbing.
His mother, and I guess. Maybe his mother brought along his grandmother for emotional support. She's rather fragile, is Bitsy Baxter.
I find Mr. Haney so funny.
I was gonna say I love the subtle humor in this scene because Mr. Haney's got like two things in his hand. He's got a lollipop and a Kleenex, and he mixes them up. He offers a lollipop to Buster's crying mother and a Kleenex to Buster, and I just really appreciated that physical gag.
Yeah, Mr.
Or
Haney,
sight gag, I should say.
especially in later episodes, but he's kind of portrayed as like a dimwit. It's a good because like Mr. Ratburn is a great authority figure, but Mr. Haney's he's a cartoon. He's like the dim-witted principal who can't seem to do anything right. It's just a fun character.
He's like, if you've ever seen Oz, he's like the Warden Glynn to Ratburn's McManus.
I haven't seen Oz, but I get what you're getting at.
Sure.
I gotta watch Oz.
You do got to watch Oz. Buster says that the crux of the meeting was that if he doesn't get his grades, if he doesn't get at least a B on the next test, he will miss the 4th grade, which is bad news for his friends because they don't want to leave him behind, which is, of course, a big worry when you're a kid. You don't want to be left behind a grade. I had a friend who was graded up in primary. So
Gifted.
Yes, very much so. And I don't recall if any of my friends didn't make the grade. I don't remember. But it's tough. Like, it's especially in that social situation, like to be left behind from all your friends and have to basically start over, and with the handicap against you of having to, it's like, oh, that's the kid who failed last year. That must be really tough.
It's definitely difficult news to wrestle with, but Buster kind of lets his friends down a little bit easy when he's giving them this speech because he's telling them that if he doesn't do well on this test, he won't be able to advance.
Yeah.
But he gives this weird Mr. Haney impression. Again, another example of this show having...
I think it was more of a Ratburn impression from the kind of deepness of the voice.
But it's another example of adults portraying kids.
Portraying adults.
Which, again, if you've ever tried to do yourself, it's a very difficult vocal exercise.
Not easy. You know what? That's a great point. I'm glad you said that.
Good on Buster.
Yeah, for sure. This line of dialogue is how I discovered that America had 50 states, because Buster says he can barely name the 30 states of America, to which Muffy corrects him and says there are 50 states. That's how I learned as a kid that America had 50 states.
Arthur goes, how will we go to the 4th grade without you?
It's true. It's a big heartbreaker to them, and it really throws their world into a bit of chaos. The next scene at the Sugar Bowl was interesting because it's Arthur, Francine, and Muffy who are kind of the main 3 of this episode behind Buster. And so Buster walks in downtrodden, and then there's a couple of the background characters sitting at the counter. And one of them who later gets a character, Jenna. But then there's like the other 2, like the Gray Rabbits, like whatever his name is. And they're just like, hey, Buster, how's it going? Grab a stool. And he's like, hey, gang. And I'm like, hey, gang? Who's this hey, gang here? Like, who's the gang? Who are we talking about a gang here?
It's Buster's Bizarro friends.
Right. His B friends, I guess.
These are who he's hanging out with when Arthur and Francine and Muffy are busy studying.
I guess
These are the delinquents he's chilling with. The Gray Rabbit's shown up enough that we need a name for him. I'm thinking Watership Down.
Okay, so like, I didn't read Watership Down.
B Rabbit. It's an 8 Mile reference. 2 on the nose.
2 on the nose.
Donnie Darko.
Let's leave that open for a little bit because.
Hey, if you have an idea what we should call the background Gray Rabbit, ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com.
Yeah, and he ain't going anywhere, so we're gonna be seeing him quite a bit, whatever his name is. maybe there's a canon name. Maybe they had a name for him. I'd love to know. They say, I don't know if Buster's ever going to get out of third grade. And Arthur's imagination runs away with that, and we get a flash forward to a 41-year-old Buster still in the third grade, still pulling tricks behind old man Ratburn's back. A gray-haired and cane using Mr. Ratburn, who asks him the question, if a boy in third grade is 8 years old, how old will he be if he repeats it 33 times? Which is a great little addition problem for a youngster, which means Buster is 41 years old in third grade.
Well, and I'll get more into this later, but a big subject of this episode is that Buster sort of struggles with academics. And I think you can come to the conclusion that he might have ADHD or some sort of learning disability. I think that's pretty apparent. And I find a lot of things in Buster that are very similar to myself. Like this third grade level addition problem, I needed a calculator to figure out. And even then, I wrote here, Buster's either 41 or 42 in this fantasy. So even my math was a little
early
bit off.
40s, let's say. You know, I was never terribly great in math either, but I just have weird systems of mental math in my head. So I just, and I think I figured that one out when I was a kid. I think I probably did that on the calculator too. So his friends decide to help him, which I think is great. It really shows kind of their mettle and how much they're invested in Buster, is that they want to help him get to the fourth grade because they don't want him to be left behind. So I really like that moment. Arthur gets the idea. Again, Binky, a source of wisdom for them because he's the only one that they know who's repeated the third grade, to which Arthur kind of butters him up by saying, gives him kind of the doe eyes and says, well, Binky, if we were looking for anybody who knew something about repeating the third grade, it was you. And then to which Binky receives that as a point of pride.
Yeah, it's a kind of a backhanded compliment.
Oh, it's not even a compliment. It's just Arthur gussying up basically an insult.
Binky, though, again, playing the wise old man sage. For as much as his intelligence is questioned,
yes,
Binky has turned out to be a fountain of knowledge so far.
Binky's a layered character, as we'll find out. This is also how I discovered the definition of the word tutor. I'd never heard the word tutor when I was a kid before Binky explained what it is. It's a private teacher. So I was just like, well, that makes sense. Okay, I know what a tutor is now. So they decide that they need to find him a tutor. Like kind of what you said about Buster, maybe having some form of, let's say, ADD instead of ADHD. Just kind of says, tutor sounds like a great idea. Anyway, we're going to the park with some other schmucks. There's a great line here. Again, Binky, very funny. Arthur says, are you guys thinking what I'm thinking? And Binky says, we just pound him?
Binky, listen, I'll defend Binky to my deathbed, but he's sort of got a one-track mind. Most problems can be solved by physical violence.
His problem-solving skills need a little bit of work. So first off, Arthur takes it upon himself to try and get Buster to study the more literary stuff. It's
his name is Arthur Reed.
It's true. Arthur visits him, wakes him up in the morning and gets him to study.
Greets Buster's mom at the door.
Yeah.
And Buster's mom goes, oh, Buster, your tutor's here. Buster springs out of bed almost in horror, thinking that an actual licensed, I don't know if you need to be, you probably don't need to be licensed.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, he's thinking some sort of adults invaded his home and is going to force him to learn. Much to his surprise and glee, it's Arthur. And he says to Arthur, oh, you got one over on my mom. We could still make it to the park, which, hey, it looks like you were sleeping in a little.
Now, I wanted to note this here because it would be really easy for Buster to be inattentive. We realize that he's inattentive to studying. And it would be very easy with the type of character he is to be like, oh, great, now I have more time to eat or read comics or play video games. But in this entire episode, when Buster wants to goof off, he's doing so by being physically active. Like he says, if we hurry, we can make it to the park before the game starts. So it's like they're going to go play kickball, they're going to go play baseball, they're going to go play sports. So if there's any good to come of this, it's that Buster, if he's being inattentive, it's because he is focusing more on physical recreation instead of learning, which of course it can be a problem, but it's at least a better problem than if he was just vegging out inside.
Maybe instead of getting high marks, he's going for that kickball scholarship.
Well, which is funny because
Duke is scouting for Buster.
He's never been like a particularly sporty character either. It's just kind of the old kind of 90s childhood thing of like, if you didn't have a Nintendo, you were going outside to play, or like if you didn't like to read. So a great shot here. Arthur says, "Get your books. We're gonna study," and it's a great shot of a Hitchcock zoom of. Did you ever?
I wrote the vertigo zoom.
Yeah,
It's
the Hitchcock zoom of physically pulling the camera back while zooming in forward, and the room warps behind Buster. He says, "Study."
He really reaches the higher octaves of his voice because, like, I didn't know Buster's voice could go that high.
True horror. And of course, as soon as they get down to the books, Buster's falling asleep, which is just kind of how his inattentiveness, like learning makes him drowsy. And it's kind of, falling asleep is one of the big traps of Buster's learning. So it seems that Buster is much more of a hands-on learner. He would probably benefit a lot more from something like later on in life, community college, or like, what do you call it in high school when you get
like a co-op.
Co-op, yeah. Yes. Like, not to say that he's necessarily doomed to a trade or anything, but he might find something more value in, like, physical type stuff.
We've also seen in the last episode, he tends to burn the midnight oil, maybe trying to crack some case when he's on his detective grind.
Could be. Buster keeps falling asleep, and he cites that it's the room that's making him sleepy, and they decide to study outside. So unfortunately, they study outside beside a baseball game, and Buster can't help but getting into the game more than his studying. And it's, Arthur says, "Buster, you're not paying attention." He said, "Sure I am. He was safe." And so Buster says, "It's so hard to keep my eyes on the page," and then suggests Arthur read to him. So he does. He begins to read to him Alice in Wonderland, but then Buster is long gone, and he is chirping the umpire of this kid's baseball game. "What do you mean? He was safe."
I wish we actually got to see the play because I want to know who was right. Was the umpire right, or did he make a bad call, and it was Buster's keen eyesight that brought it to the forefront?
So so Arthur kind of gives up in that regard, and then the next idea they get is because of the fact that Buster is so often focused on food, so they decide to do a little bit of food learning with Francine and Muffy. They spend their money on some double dip peanut fudge, which sounds pretty darn good.
This plan's already in jeopardy because I would, if they did this to me, I don't think I would be able to have the self-control not to eat it. It sounds so good.
I'm 26, and I couldn't do this with having the proper attention. So they try to do some division problems in terms of, they are 30, which ends up being a bit of a problem. There are 20 pieces that, Francie says there are 20 pieces. If they're dividing them between two of them, obviously each of them gets 10. Then Francine says, "How would we divide it between the three of us, me, you, and Muffy?" And then immediately I'm just like, you can't. You would need to cut at least two of them into thirds because 20 doesn't divide into 3.
Okay. See, this is. I wish I did this math beforehand.
Well, see, I'll kind of take you through it. It's like they would each get 6. No.
Again. Oh, I'm so unprepared.
Where's
my calculator?
Okay.
Oh no, I'm having flashbacks.
Well, they would each get 6 because 3 times 6 is 18. Then they would have 2 left over, and then they would have to split both of those into thirds so that they would each get an equal.
So they would get 6.3333333 each.
They would get 6 2/3.
Oh wait. Let's move on. My head's starting to hurt.
All I'm saying is, Lucas, you can't divide 20 into 3. Because I'm sorry, but it's like it goes 5 times 3 is 15, then 18, and then 21. 20 doesn't go into 3. That's all I'm saying, and then we can move on. I'm saying that Buster was defeated before he started. This was a bad idea. So then, of course, Buster starts eating the stash to try and make it more equal, which is not a bad idea. All he has to do is eat an extra 2, but then, of course, that's unfair. Anyway, moving on from the math, Muffy decides it's time to take drastic, and Binky, his solution is to read him some American history while he's tied up to a tree. But see, the problem is that Binky puts on those type of fake glasses where it's like your eyes look like they're open all the time, and it's like, well, really, or no, I'm sorry, I think I got that wrong actually, because I originally thought, well, why did Binky put those eyeglasses on him? And I think it's that Buster had those in his back pocket and he snuck them on his face so he could fall asleep.
Binky's not the only one who can use those cheap magician tricks to try and get one over. Binky was trying to use them for warfare last episode.
Mm-hmm.
This episode, Buster's trying to get out of reading by using some novelty eyeglasses.
And speaking of conjurers of cheap tricks, Buster, with a little bit of a cheating montage, a short one. He solves a math problem with the use of a calculator, and then he answers a question that Arthur gives him by looking at a map that is clearly down.
That's right. We give it a callback to the 50 states line.
Well, my question is, what is this question? Because the answer to the question is Colorado, Utah, Nevada, and California.
I think he was just naming all 50 states, and we see the action at the end of the naming process. So I think it was the same. It was a callback to earlier in the episode where he says, I can't name any of the 30 states. Muffy says, of course, actually, there's 50. And so I think what we see is the tail end of Buster successfully naming all 50 states. He was just looking at a map of the United States.
All right, I buy that.
Naming all 50 states, I guess we're Canadians, so it doesn't really count, but it's very difficult.
I can't do it. I don't even know where the 50 states are.
I mean, I can name the big ones, but once we start getting into
I know New York's in the Northeast, and that's it.
California's in the West.
Sure, I guess so. So then Buster kind of resigns to it, like he's going to fail. And his friends kind of do too. They're out of options, and they don't know what else to do.
Buster's so defeated when they're at the Sugar Bowl, he lets out this exasperated sigh and then knocks over 3 milkshakes.
Or like they look more like orange sodas, but yeah, whatever they were meant to be, tall drinks of whatever.
Regardless, he doesn't offer to pay for them. Come on, guys. That's like a lot of money for when you're 8 years old. Your friend purposely shoves his head, he headbutts the table, knocks over 3 milkshakes. I know you're upset, Buster, but that's just needless.
Well, it could have been that those were his 3.
That's true. Hey, trying to drink the pain away. I hear you, Buster. I've been there.
Resigned to his fate, Arthur says, just remember, Buster, I'll always be your friend, even when the other 4th graders are picking on you. Like really, really doomsaying his future. Like not really giving him too much credit, but in their defense, they tried everything and it didn't work. And then Arthur kind of ominously leaving it at, I'm sure gonna miss you. So long.
Binky is slowly becoming my a favorite character that I didn't really appreciate when I watched the show as a kid, because I never realized how much depth the writers really give Binky. Every time we see him, we learn a little bit more about him, and it's always fun, but like he's got so many layers. Like the writers make fun of Binky because he's supposed to be dumb, but he's complicated. And Binky's got a great line here. He goes, 3rd grade's a lot easier the second time around. Or the 3rd. So he's trying to help Buster, but he's still kind of showing that he's a little dense himself.
Well, there's not much help to be had, I think, is the problem. So then Buster gets his own image of himself at 41, which oddly enough syncs up to Arthur's image of Buster at 41. So they're best friends for a reason, I guess. So Buster taken into the principal's office, and it's Principal Arthur.
What a twist.
Yeah. Still keeping Ratburn on the payroll, so he knows good talent when he sees it. So Arthur calls him in. Buster thinks it's because he can move on to the 4th grade at last, but no, he's going to be sending him to where he can nap and play all day, preschool. And then imaginary Buster breaks down and says, I know I can do it. I know I can. And then that's the motivation Buster needs to say, I know I can. And so he gets down to business. And it's a montage of Buster shirking play and eating snacks and using it all to his benefit to study as best he can.
It's almost like an addict reaching rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
This fantasy of Buster's is sort of his lowest point in the episode.
Yeah.
Literally on his hands and knees begging this adult Arthur, give me another chance. I don't want to go back to preschool.
Yeah.
And this is the motivation Buster needed, the kick in the butt, to use some uncouth language, to get him into gear.
And so it seems that the 3 subjects that are part of this test are math, literature, and American history. So he's trying to go over all of them through like memorization and like sample problems and everything.
Mr. Rapburn said it's a test covering the entire year's curriculum. So I don't know what part of the year this is supposed to take place, if this is like some sort of midterm or if this is near the end of the school year and it's like a wide swath.
Could be. Like, if we went into the whole timeline of how everything in Arthur takes place in the 3rd grade, our heads would be spinning. So, not worth thinking about for too long. So, Ratburn's handing them back. His friends don't really think much will happen. As he says, Ratburn's comments, good, not bad, illegible. And then Buster, who needed a B to pass, makes it by with a B+. So, he does indeed make the grade. But Arthur, not so much. Arthur needs to work on his division. Perhaps Buster can give him a few pointers. Oh, how the turntables.
Before this episode ends, when Buster sort of has another montage, kind of the opposite of the earlier montage where he's cheating to get out of work. This montage is of all his studying techniques, which are actually pretty humorous. He uses some kind of Rube Goldberg OK Go machine to stay awake.
Yeah, the weighted contraption with the rubber duck full of water to keep him awake. Uses like the Skittles to do division problems.
Which he uses that knowledge later in the montage where he excitedly exclaims on the very same park bench in which he said he was going to fail, he was going to be held back and won't enter the 4th grade. He exclaims, 9 times 9 is 81. And this is how I learned that 9 times 9 was 81.
That was me too. That was the exact cadence of which I remembered in my head. It's like how I remembered 8 times 8 is Nintendo 64.
Oh, I never heard that, but I'm gonna keep that.
That was straight from my mom. Just like, how am I ever gonna remember 8 times 8? She's like, 8 times 8 Nintendo 64. I'm like, thanks, Mom. That really works. So there you go. It's Buster makes the grade, and indeed he does. So, what did you think of the 2 episodes that we had?
I liked them. The first episode, I was a little indifferent to. It's a solid episode, but I didn't really have any emotional response to it, neither here nor there. The second episode might be a front runner for one of my favorites so far, because I think it tackles a subject very near and dear to my heart. I really empathize with Buster and see myself in Buster's position here. I had a tutor when I was in high school for math. I had a lot of troubles having dyslexia. It affected my math and it affected a lot of my schoolwork. And I don't think I was ever diagnosed with ADD, but I did have trouble paying attention and study similarly to the trouble that Buster experienced. So I really enjoyed this episode. I think it tackled these subjects, these kind of complicated subjects of having trouble in school and people needing to learn differently and work hard in different ways. You know, some people are more tactile learners, some people are more visual learners, and I think it handled that subject matter really, really well. Not making Buster seem like a dummy, just making him seem like a kid that had difficulty learning the way everybody else did and had to learn a different way. I loved this episode.
Cool. Well, I'm glad. I will agree with you on the second one. I really think that Buster Makes the Grade is, again, very strong. We've had good luck with Buster-centric episodes. I also really like it, and I think you make some awesome points for why it's, you know, one of the better ones that we've seen so far. And the only thing I'd add is that I think the animation in that episode is really, really good, and I really enjoyed watching it. And I thought the humor was on point. Arthur Goes to Camp is another one of those ones where you can tell by the animation, I feel like that was one of the ones that was probably made, I'm going to say earlier in production, because it kind of looks the same as a couple of other ones that we've covered and ones that we will cover in the first season. Not the greatest to look at, and also I don't really care for it. Like it's like really this. I don't want to speak too soon, but so far when the show is at its worst, it's still harmless. Like there's nothing bad about it, but it's just like I don't think I would ever want to watch this episode again necessarily.
Yeah, Arthur Goes to Camp, it's very bland. There's some bright spots. I think the montage at the end of the actual scavenger hunt's fun.
Yeah.
I think the animation of them crawling around in the tent is the one bright spot of animation in that episode.
Yeah.
It's a funny visual, and I think there's some cute lines from the enemy camp, Camp Horsewater.
Sure.
There's some cartoonishly evil 8 to 10-year-olds. But besides that, I agree with you. It kind of just washed over me.
Yeah, me too. It's like I said, not really one I would want to revisit. But Buster Makes the Grade, absolutely. I would put that on the high end of the episodes we've watched so far this season.
Now, I don't know about the way you watched this video, I'm sure absolutely legally, but
Yep.
in the video I was watching, there was a little behind the scenes of Arthur bit at the end, and I'm not sure if this was something that was specific to this episode.
I think I did too, and that seemed like a newer kind of tack on to maybe like a PBS repeat of
I'm
it.
really like going into the dark reaches of my brain here to try and remember this, but I think it might have been like it was like a bumper in between shows.
It was like no, it was just like, do you want to see how we make an Arthur episode or something?
But it was interesting. Like, I forgot that these early episodes of Arthur, and of course in later seasons, they're going to forgo this process, but the backgrounds are all hand painted, which is kind of a lost art in a lot of animations because it's so intensive and arduous and expensive compared to just using, flash cells or computer generated imagery. These hand-painted backgrounds are actually, it's really fascinating to see them painting it. It's kind of a lost art in animation.
For sure, and I want to note that even when I say I'm a bit critical of the animation, I'm not saying like, oh, I could do it better, or like, this is complete crap or anything. Like, it's not. Again, when I say Arthur and I don't like an episode, it's at worst harmless. The animation is never like ugly or like horrible. It's just kind of not what I prefer looking at personally.
Yeah, totally valid.
Yeah, and I don't want to ever dismiss, because of course, as you said, this is hand drawn, which is a bit of a lost art these days, and definitely don't want to discount anybody's efforts in making this show. So good reminder. Well, next episode is one that I've been waiting for a long time, or at least the first one is, because this is where we get an important character of the show finally fleshed out and given the origin stories proper. It is Arthur's new puppy, followed by Arthur Bounces Back. So, it is the episode, the beginning of Pal in Arthur's life.
Here we go. I'm excited. I had the book of this one.
Did you?
This is the first one where I had and it wasn't one of the novels. It wasn't.
Oh, it was like one of the chapter
It was
books?
one of the picture books.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah. So sorry, not one of the chapter books. One of the shorter picture books for a younger audience.
Sure.
So I'm excited.
So study up for Arthur's new puppy and Arthur Bounces Back, the next episode of Elwood City Limits. Thanks a lot for joining us. Lucas, anything left to say?
We're number one. Yeah.
We're number one. Yeah. For Lucas Mancini, I'm Will Young. Thank you for listening to Elwood City Limits. No matter how you did it, we appreciate it. Until next time.